Welcome in. Also, I know we're live, but I need to change this over. Now we're really rolling. It's the HoosierIllustrated.com postgame wrap-up show, not in touch with Indiana sports. That'll be tomorrow here on Hoosier Illustrated. But for now, Kyler Staley and myself are going to react to what just went down between Indiana's 97-71 victory over Sam Houston. Of course, overall, good bounce-back performance after what happened last week during the Battle for Atlantis. Kyler, I'll toss it over to you. What are your initial takeaways from tonight's game?
Yeah, I mean, going into this game, like, especially being here in Assembly Hall, I felt a weird energy. It was kind of like overall, Indiana did come back with a win from Atlantis beating Providence, but overall, it was obviously a very disappointing trip for the Hoosiers. I think just expectations were just, hampered a little bit for this team, and not a whole lot of energy coming into this. It's a late night game Tuesday. It is super cold in Bloomington, so just a lot of factors that just don't really add up to having a good atmosphere. But I got to give Indiana, the players a lot of credit. They kind of fought against that energy a little bit, and I felt like throughout the game they got on multiple runs. You would look at the live stats and see, 12-0 run, 16-3 run, things like that. And they just kept using their offense, to create. The defense, had some lapses, but it was much better than what we had seen, with Atlantis. And obviously the talking point, Luke Goody has his career high. He finally pops off. And if you've heard me on the show, I'm sure John said it, you've heard me on, talking about the Hoosiers podcast, we were just waiting for this type of game from Luke Goody, where he goes, what was it, 5 of 7 from 3, 5 of 8 overall, finished
Yes.
with 18 points. So just spectacular. And when he's knocking down shots like that, it makes Indiana a much more dangerous team. It opens the floor up, it spaces it a whole lot more. And then obviously, I think they had 4 players in double figures. You had Miles Rice, who had a bounce back game as well, 19 points, 9 of 12 shooting. Did have 3 turnovers, but did end up with 3 assists. So major bounce back, obviously, because he had a really disappointing showing in Atlantis. And Malik Renew, 18 points, and a double-double. So got to add that as well. And then Mackenzie Mbako finishes with 13. So overall, Indiana took care of business like they needed to this game. And overall, it was just a nice little bounce back victory.
And while we're talking players, a little shout out to Ja'Kai Newton for coming in towards the very end of the game and kind of making a few impact plays. And I know it was during garbage time, but it's nice to see him get in a few quality minutes, and especially, of course, after the injuries. I know he's only played in one other game this year, or at least he's only scored in one other game this year that I'm aware of, Eastern Illinois. So good to see him get 4 quick points towards the end of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously going into this game, the backcourt of Indiana was going to be very limited tonight because Cannon Carlisle and Gabe Cup's both out. You got to watch out for those injuries, see if they're going to be long-term or not. But Ja'Kai Newton, to me, it means just a little bit more when he's out on the floor and he's scoring because, obviously what he's went through with his injuries, and he's constantly fighting those, lower body injuries. And when he gets in the game and the times you've seen him, he shows some good things. He shows a lot of promise. Obviously, it's going to take him probably this whole year to get back into that basketball shape. So you're hoping that he's going to be healthy for the most part, where he can play in these kind of spot minutes. And if he can and just get his basketball legs under him, I think he could be really, really dangerous for Indiana if he is here for the long haul.
Was there anything that stood out to you tonight that, even though it was a really good performance against a team that you should have handled the way that they did, what would you like to see them improve between now and Miami of Ohio, of course, before they go into Big Ten play next week?
Well, I mean, I guess starting with the good things that I saw, I thought Indiana was much better on the boards tonight. They won 37-25 on the rebounding battle. Sam Houston, not a very big team, not a very physical team, I would say. So Indiana did a really good job. The bigs obviously did a good job, and I thought the perimeter guys also stepped in and were willing to rebound. Going off of that, also saw those perimeter guys, going for loose balls and just being communicative on that, but I think, honestly, just with this Indiana team, just continue to improve on the defensive end. Like I said, there were some lapses tonight, especially in the second half. I felt like they let Sam Houston, their guards, their perimeter guys, get to the basket way too often. And I think there was about a good 5-minute stretch where it felt like every time they attacked the basket, they got an and one. So the refs' whistles were very, very, very active in the second half. But overall, I mean, this Indiana team's just got to work on the defense. I think the offense is there for Indiana, and they miss a little bit of bunnies here and there and everything, but they're starting to shoot the ball a whole lot better from the 3. The volume is really nice. I think they finished with 15, so I'll take that amount of threes. Maybe you want a few more off of that, but they finished 7 of 15, so you take that. Just continue to be active on the glass. Keep having those perimeter guys attack, and not just stand around and watch Ballo or Renew kind of work down low. And just continue to just get better when the turnovers. They finished with 12 total, I think, but they had 8 in the first half, so much better in the second half. But to me, for this Indiana team to get to that next level, it's going to be, buying in on the defensive end. They've got the players, and you've seen at times throughout the season, not really in Atlantis, but like the times that they played here in Assembly Hall, they've shown that they can be a pretty good defensive team. I go back to the South Carolina game where I thought they were really good on that end. But for them, this month of December, it's just like kind of like a get right month, take care of business at home. Hopefully win these first 2 Big Ten games that are coming up next week, I think, and just continue to get better on the defensive end. I think that's the main thing for this Indiana team.
One thing I noticed is that Mike Woodson seemed at least a little more comfortable tonight playing 1 big in the lineup instead of 2 for longer periods of time. Do you think that was maybe just a one-off for this game in particular, or do you think that he's trying to maybe shift things a little bit based on some of the failures that were had down in the Bahamas?
Can you repeat that, John? Sorry, I had something kind of swing.
No, you're good. So I noticed that Mike Woodson was a little more comfortable playing 1 big man as opposed to 2 for longer periods of time tonight. Do you think this is maybe just a one-off experiment, or do you think that he's trying to make adjustments based on some of the failures that we saw down in the Bahamas when things weren't working the way? Because a lot of people were complaining about how stubborn Mike Woodson seemed like he was being whenever he was being overtly reliant last week on having 2 bigs in the game at the same time.
So here's my thing, and I obviously probably maybe seeing this a little bit different than everybody else. I feel like Mike Woodson's actually went a lot smaller than what people are kind of giving him credit for this season. Because here's the thing, like if he was going with a 2 big lineup all the time or whatever, you would see Langdon Hatton playing a whole lot more than what he is. Like, let's be honest there. And Langdon Hatton's a great basketball player. He's proven he's came in anytime he does that break glass in case of emergency type of role, and he comes in, he produces when he's on the floor. But at the same time, I think Mike Woodson's doing a much better job. A lot of times you'll see, and you can obviously kind of chart this game and see what lineups worked probably tomorrow when everything's kind of released or whatever. But Luke Goody, McKenzie, and Baco play really, really well together. And then that's obviously going to open up 1 big. So I think Mike Woodson's going to continue to do that. Yes, he's going to have to play the 2 bigs.
Let me interrupt you real quick. I'm not trying to say that he needs to go away from it, but one thing, it's just one of those things that when you see more of it when that hasn't been the case, it's something that catches people's eyes, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's obviously people complain about Mike Woodson and everything like that. That's pretty much one of the first things they go to is unwillingness to adapt. To me, I am kind of supportive of Mike Woodson, and I think he can turn this thing around this season because I don't think the season's lost by any means. But I think he has done a really good job when it comes to playing McKenzie and Baco more at the 4, getting Luke Goody and him together at the 4, even Luke Goody playing the 4 at times. And honestly, I think the best lineup is when you have Goody and McKenzie and Baco and Malik Renew is playing that small ball 5. I think that's the best. And then whatever guards you want to put in that backcourt, I think that's the best lineup. And I think that's what you're going to see most of the time. But at the same time, Mike Woodson's also going to take advantage that he has probably the best front court in the Big Ten. Yeah. He's going to take advantage of that. Any coach would take advantage of that, and you'd be stupid not to. So, I mean, I think he'll see a good balance moving forward and everything. But this month is going to be kind of telling, what you'll see kind of as, the type of rotations you'll see Mike Woodson go to when he gets into the Big Ten play.
Yeah, especially next week whenever they face Minnesota to kick off Big Ten play, as you mentioned. That first result is going to be, I don't want to say very telling because I don't like to overreact to initial results, but it will be a good, maybe case study is the best word, or maybe it's not. But
I like that.
It'll be an interesting case study to see what maybe the plan could look like moving forward as we get deeper and deeper into the season, because this time next month, it'll be full on Big Ten play, baby.
Absolutely. In Minnesota, I mean, not to harp on the Gophers or anything, but Minnesota should be the worst team in the Big Ten this year. If you've watched games of them, anybody that's watched games, they just do not have that talent level at this point in time. So Indiana's going to get a Minnesota team that's, probably
similar to what they saw with South Carolina a couple of weeks ago.
And honestly, and I would even go one step further, probably similar to like Sam Houston in a way. Even though it is a Big Ten game, you've got to take that a lot more serious than this game, obviously. But this Minnesota team, you got them at Assembly Hall. I expect that crowd to be a little bit more active, because it is a Big Ten game. They should be able to take care of business. It's really the game at Nebraska that, you really need to watch, because Indiana struggled with Nebraska over the past few years, and Hoiberg's got his team, he's got a good team. So that's just one you can't sleep on. But if Indiana somehow can start off the season 2-0 in the Big Ten, you take that any day of the week.
Of course. Good stuff tonight. Looking forward to checking out how this team will continue to try to build off of tonight's performance against Miami of Ohio on Friday. And then, of course, Big Ten play next week with Minnesota, and then on the road at Nebraska. As you mentioned, I almost said Michigan State. And the reason I almost said Michigan State is because when I was doing a bit of I don't know if it was a deep dive, I was looking at Nebraska and Minnesota's schedules, and they both play Michigan State and Indiana for their Big Ten openers or something like that. Kind of weird the way that it's kind of.
Who's making the schedule here? We got to talk about.
I don't know.
That's
very weird stuff. Anyway, we'll go ahead and wrap up tonight's post-game wrap-up show. Kyler Staley, appreciate you as always. And, of course, check out Talking About the Hoosiers whenever they release that, usually weekly on Thursdays. And subscribe to Hoosier Illustrated, of course, on YouTube. Check out everything going on the website from Kyler, Alec, Drew, Dylan. I don't do much writing, but this show gets posted on there. So check out that, too, if you'd like. In Touch with Indiana Sports, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And until tomorrow, and then until Friday for another post-game wrap-up, this has been another edition of this edition, I guess, of the Indiana Basketball HoosierIllustrated.com post-game wrap-up show.